Hi. So, I have a question to start off with for you guys today. Have you ever felt like you didn't quite belong? I think it's a pretty normal feeling to go through every now and then. Like maybe you've started in a started school or started a new school, and for a while you might feel like you don't quite belong. Or maybe I've had this too, like going through a new part of the city, driving through a new part of the city or the country, and looking out and seeing unfamiliar things and thinking to myself, I don't think I quite belong. Or maybe you've even felt that way in places and among people that you are quite familiar with. You've known them for a long time, but someone might say something that makes you feel or wonder, do I really belong? I know I have. But belonging to God is something that can never change, ever. He's our creator. He's our Father. We belong to Him, and nothing can take that away. I want to tell you a story about a time when I wondered if I belonged, and then how God showed me that I did. See, here we are. Let me get my globe. Right about here in the United States, the little pink square is Colorado. And I think if I hold it up, you can see Denver. We're here. And I live here now, but I didn't grow up here. See, when I was young, I lived in Australia, which is across the ocean and down under. Right over here, Western Australia, in a town or city called Perth. It's what I knew, right? Things are kind of the same. We'd play, I had neighbors, I'd go to the beach for fun. I grew up there, went to elementary school. But when I was about halfway through the second grade, incidentally, the same age as my daughter Geneva, whom you might know, my family moved all the way back to the United States. And on our way back, we visited a few places. One of those places was a little island called Singapore. And so if you go up from Perth, it's right up here at the tip of that peninsula, Singapore. And you can see it's surrounded by countries, right? You've got Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, China, big country with a lot of influence up to the side. And then India even had a major impact in Singapore. Lots of different people live there, lots of different cultures. And while we were there, it came to pass that we would celebrate Christmas in Singapore. Now I was kind of worried. My friends weren't there. My family, other than my parents and my brother, weren't there. In fact, things looked awfully different. Were there any Christmas trees or decorations? And I wondered how we would celebrate Christmas. Well, Christmas Eve, we did go to church. We walked in through the doors. And while some things felt familiar, some things felt very, very different. For one, it wasn't in English. The language was completely different. The style of music was different. Certainly the faces of the people around me were very different. And I wondered if I belonged. But there, the setting was the same, right? Here you have the wise men and Mary and Joseph and the central image of Jesus laying in a manger. The lights dimmed, and we sang what I assume was Silent Night. At least the music sounded the same. I don't know if the words were. And there I knew, this story I know. And I felt like I belonged. It felt like Christmas. Now, after the service, there was a massive and a festive potluck. And as you can imagine, there was every kind of food imagined because of all the the cultures that lived. So we had piles of noodles and egg rolls and fried rice and fruit salads and just things that we don't traditionally think of when we think of Christmas. In fact, I remember one dish, it was pig's ears, sliced really thin and tossed with cilantro. I did take a bite. It wasn't quite what I was expecting. And again, I got nervous. I got anxious. I looked around and I wondered, do I belong? But again, my fears were put to rest when one of the women came up to me and gave me a small little gift. Again, I knew God was showing me that I belonged. Even though everything was different, the language, the music, the people, the food, and I wondered, the story of God was the same. The story of God's love shown to us in Jesus, celebrated at Christmas, was the same. Because God didn't just come for me, he came for the whole world. The whole world, right? And here I began to, at that moment, I began to realize that love was what connected us to each other, even though we looked very different, and connected us to God, our Creator and Father. It was the same story, shown through worship, shown through the meal, right? Same story celebrated again and again, showing that I belonged, that we belong, and that we belong to God.